Hello wonderful interpreters, and thank you again for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to talk about LNI's training session last Saturday and their response to PERC about our motion for temporary relief. So let's get started. Last Saturday on April 24th, LNI held another MyLanguageLink aka interpretingWorks training session for interpreters. This session started at 11 a.m. and was about 1 hour long, including a Q&A session for 30 minutes. I received many screenshots from several interpreters who participated, but I will only be sharing the ones showing some key details because of time. Please feel free to pause this video at any time in order to read the information that you see on the screen. On the first screenshot here, this interpreter is asking why is the system sending assignments that are extremely far from where interpreters live since LNI is not paying for mileage. Marisa Gilio here responded by saying that they supposedly want to expand opportunities to interpreters living in remote areas. However, many interpreters feel that LNI now wants us to still spend our gas money to service those patients in remote areas, even after being influenced by WFC Local 1671 leaders to take away our mileage reimbursement. Here on this one, this interpreter is asking why are medical providers now in charge of reminding patients of their appointments when they're not certified interpreters? How can these patients understand, right? Well, Emily from LNI says that interpreters have never been paid to do that and that it's always been the provider's responsibility to do this. She's still, though, avoiding the issue of providers not being certified interpreters or qualified to communicate with these patients without an interpreter. Here, this interpreter didn't let go and pressed for a straight answer, but nothing happened. They don't have to pay for no-shows, but won't allow interpreters to remind patients of their appointments. That's one of the many reasons why we need a union. Here, this interpreter is talking about waiting time, which LNI has always paid interpreters for. But now, there are medical providers enrolled in the system that are not willing to reflect that when interpreters check in and out of appointments. It seems like Marisa Gilio here does not seem to understand this question, saying the system will pay if you're waiting for the provider to call the LEP. But as you can see here, this interpreter is talking about waiting for a patient that is late for an appointment and providers not wanting to account for that time when checking interpreters in. Still, no answer after that exchange. There were many other questions asked, but this one here triggered a very interesting answer. This interpreter is asking how is the portal allocating appointments? Marisa Gilio here says that by proximity to the location, gender, and qualifications. But here, this is an answer from Victoria DiMario to an interpreter. Victoria here says that the system sends appointments in batches of whoever is closest, right? It seems somewhat consistent. Well, here's where things get interesting. As you can see here, this interpreter is concerned about appointments disappearing the second they're offered. Then Marisa Gilio says that these appointments are assigned by an algorithm which is different for each event. Appointments assigned by an algorithm? Well, to end the session, this anonymous interpreter asked the question that you see on the screen here. This appointment assignment algorithm is concerning. Understanding that interpretingWorks was previously identified as OneLingua and OneLingua is connected to WFC, what oversight is underway to ensure OneLingua is not influencing the algorithm by having appointments for WFC interpreters only? And they didn't answer that question. Now, look at what this interpreter reported here in one of our WhatsApp groups for interpreters. Referring to WFC, she said that a union member told a friend to sign up for the portal because appointments are posted just like ULS does. This interpreter ends the comment by saying, "I wonder if union members," referring to WFC, "get first dibs on assignments." What do you think about all of this? Moving on, you do remember that LNI had 7 days to respond to our motion for temporary relief, and their response was due yesterday. After that, PERC will forward our motion to the Commission. Well, LNI responded yesterday, and we pretty much anticipated the arguments they made against our motion. All excuses for breaking the law in the first place, in my humble opinion. But hey, I'm going to summarize this pretty quick and only show you a couple of relevant details to save time. Here, they submitted a declaration by Tammy Felling from LNI. She is a legislative liaison who represents LNI before the legislature. I have a lot of respect for Tammy. She says here she represented LNI back in 2018 when SB 6245 was passed. This is the law that brought the implementation, as you can remember. Here, Tammy shares the portion of the law that pertains to LNI, including the amendments that I was able to introduce with the help of a couple of interpreters. You've seen this before, where LNI has the option to pay us directly or through the scheduling system, or both, making it clear that they can implement a dual system whenever they want to. Now, some people who never did anything disagreed with me at the time about these amendments, but as you can see here, these amendments are giving LNI the option for a dual system. Here, Tammy acknowledges that I was active during the legislative session for SB 6245 and that I testified against it. Here she details that I met with legislators and was instrumental in securing changes, like allowing agency owners to be defined as language access providers. I've shown you this before, but it's good that you see it here coming from LNI. Now, Tammy is here stating the facts only, and she's not speaking bad about me or our union, Washington Interpreters. LNI wanted Tammy to do this to show that I was there, since I'm the person who filed and signed the motion to stop the scheduling system through Washington Interpreters, our union. Now, I want you to pay close attention to this here. Here you can see the declaration from Karen Jost. She is a program manager for LNI, managing the Health Services Analysis Program within the Insurance Services Department. She is the program manager, right? Well, why is this important? I had a meeting with Susan Campbell, then in charge of the implementation of this bill, and members of her team at LNI back in November 26, 2019. I brought a few interpreters with me for that meeting. What you see here on the screen is a picture of the notes that I made. I even made a video about this meeting. All interpreters in the meeting had a very good set of questions and proposals, but still letting independent interpreters get paid directly so that we could control our billing, right? Well, you can pause and read my whole question here, but I want you to look at Susan's answer. This is very telling. She is saying here that LNI wanted a third party to run the interpreter program. Susan adds here that the decision came directly from our program manager to have someone else to do this. One single person here. Now, here you can see Susan makes it very clear. She says our contract manager is the main person responsible for this, and she made it clear that she wants to contract out our interpreter program. Now let's go back to the declaration from Karen Jost to PERC yesterday. Here, Karen Jost says that medical providers arranged appointments for interpreters, but some interpreters attended all of that individual's appointments without invitation from a provider, even engaging in advocacy for patients, which is of course unethical, right? Now, this is interesting. You have to be allowed and invited by medical providers, we all know this, to attend consecutive appointments, and they do agree with that, especially when the patient prefers a particular interpreter. But hey, we all know LNI does not allow the patient to choose the interpreter, right? But the provider respects what the patient wants most times. I've shown you this before, but here it is again. Karen Jost sits at the DSHS Advisory Committee alongside other WFC Local 1671 leaders who all make decisions about us without our consent, right? Well, we all know who influenced Elle and I to take our mileage, right? And they demonized all independent interpreters as unethical. Here is her email address in case you may have questions for her about her decision to contract out our services and her role at DSHS alongside WFC leaders. Finally, Elle and I lawyers here requested PERC to deny our motion for temporary relief. And their document is actually pretty large. So basically, they submitted a bunch of excuses, in my opinion, saying that Elle and I gave enough notice about their changes to interpreters, complaining that our motion won't allow them to fulfill the law requiring their implementation, when we all know that the same law allows them to give us a dual system. They attacked the affidavits that we submitted from interpreters as supposedly lacking evidence. But they know very well that the law only required one affidavit as evidence, and we submitted 10 of them. And we also have way more in case we need them later. In closing, I want you to keep in mind that PERC received these arguments yesterday, April 27th, and as you saw in my last video, PERC will review this and submit our motion to the Commission. There is nothing that Elle and I can do about this as this is moving forward. And that's the process. We still have to wait for the Commission to take this to the Thurston County Superior Court for them to order Elle and I to stop this implementation. It all comes down to PERC's Commission dealing with it now or through our unfair labor practice in a matter of weeks. Still, this is happening. Elle and I broke the law making these changes while our representation petition is still pending. And there's no way around that. See the links in the description below now for instructions on how to send us your signed card. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't in order to keep on getting relevant information for our interpreting community. See you in the next video. Do not lose hope, and as always, God bless.